On 5 News, Gove makes his move. The Justice Secretary says he is standing for the Tory leadership out of conviction, not ambition.
I know I have the experience, the energy, and perhaps most importantly, the sense of urgency about what needs to be done.
Do you feel betrayed by Mr. Gove?
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson speaks out about his decision not to run for the top job. We'll have the very latest on the race to be the next Prime Minister. Also today, remembering the Somme. 100 years on, the Prime Minister and Prince Charles lead the commemorations of one of the bloodiest battles in history. More than 1 million men lost their lives during it, and here services of tribute and other touching displays of remembrance across the country. Also coming up, we're in Lille for Wales's date with destiny.
The fans are gathering, the players are preparing. The stage is set here ahead of the biggest football match for Wales in more than 50 years.
Hello, welcome to 5 News. I'm Matt Barbett. He is the man who killed off his allies' ambitions for a job he says he didn't want. And today, Michael Gove made his pitch for Prime Minister, insisting he was doing it because it was right for the country. The Justice Secretary said he'd done everything he could not to be a candidate, and he admitted he lacked charisma and glamour. But he says Boris Johnson isn't up to the task. Boris himself, meanwhile, was trying hard to stay tight-lipped. Our political editor, Andy Bell, reports.
He's in the thick of it now. After dispatching Boris Johnson in the shadows yesterday, Michael Gove came out to make his case for the leadership, saying he really had wanted to back his comrade from the Leave campaign.
I so wanted that plan to work. I worked night and day for it. But I came to realise this week that for all Boris's formidable talents, he was not the right person for that task.
And he was having another bad day when he came out and walked straight into a member of the public.
Why?
What have you done to this country?
Seems you're right to me.
What?
Seems you're right to me.
Rubbish.
Seems absolutely fine to me. What?
Absolute rubbish.
Nonsense.
You stood based on your own interest. Yes, you did. Absolute disgrace. You don't have the guts to sort it out.
For once, he seemed lost for words.
Do you feel betrayed by Mr. Gove?
I cannot, unfortunately, get on with doing what I wanted to do. So it'll be up to somebody else now. And I wish him every possible success.
And he meant that most sincerely. Back at Westminster, Michael Gove was setting out his pitch, in particular saying only a committed leaver like him, and unlike Theresa May, should be the next Prime Minister.
Put simply, the best person to lead Britain out of the European Union is someone who argued to get Britain out of the European Union.
And on EU negotiations, he said immigration control should trump access to the single market.
Are you really telling the people of this country you're prepared to sacrifice economic prosperity if that is the price that has to be paid to ensure complete control of the country's borders?
I don't accept the false choice that you're setting up, but I do accept that one thing is clear. The people of this country voted to end free movement, to restore parliamentary control of our democracy, to have an Australian-style point system and to reduce numbers on immigration. And I will deliver that pledge.
He only had a handful of MPs with him. Well, it is Friday. Michael Gove may have made a dramatic entrance into this race, but how much further can he go? Andy Bell, 5 News.
As Michael Gove was making his announcement, George Osborne was making another, and it wasn't good news. The Chancellor said his key target for getting Britain out of the red by 2020 would have to be abandoned because of Brexit. Catherine Jones is at number 11 Downing Street now. What's happened there, Catherine?
Well, ever since the Chancellor moved in here, one of his central aims has been to try to get the government to earn more in taxes than it spends on services by the year 2020. We've had 6 years of painful austerity to try to reach that. 6 years of austerity that led to all those protests in the streets against things like the bedroom tax, against things like frozen pay for nurses and teachers, or cuts to council services. What we've got now is a Chancellor saying that despite going through all of that, we are not going to be able to reach that target because, as he says, it's not realistic to stick to the aim because of significant negative shock to the UK economy.
it's incredibly important we maintain fiscal credibility, that we are tough on the deficit while being realistic about achieving the surplus by the end of the decade. That is exactly what our fiscal rules provided for. They explicitly acknowledge the impact of a significant negative shock.
So, Kathy, what does this signal then for the future?
Well, many economists already thought that that target was utterly unrealistic. Now the Chancellor agrees with them. Basically, it means that were we to fall into recession over the next few years, the government will borrow more rather than potentially putting up taxes or having even harsher cuts.
It is significant because the UK economy has been slowing for quite some time. Brexit could be the final straw that tips it into recession, in which case it is the government's job to relax its rules slightly to enable a little bit more stimulus from more investment or a cut in taxes to get the economy going again.
As we know, though, running an overdraft is expensive, and the less you pay back, the longer it takes. That's effectively what the Chancellor is saying is happening to Britain today. He's effectively signalling, in his view, the age of austerity is about to get longer.
Kathy, thanks very much indeed. So, it is now a week since it was confirmed that Britain had voted to leave the EU. Perhaps it feels a bit longer. Since then, economies have been given a jolt. Promises have been put into doubt, as we've been hearing, and there's been all manner of political turmoil, not least that decision by the main Leave figure, Boris Johnson, to abandon his plans to become Prime Minister. So Dominic Reynolds has been to Thurrock, one of the most pro-Leave towns in Britain, to find out how people there are feeling now.
Economic shocks, social pressure, and Westminster turned upside down. It's supposed to be a long time in politics, but this week has been a long one for everyone. So what do Leavers make of the referendum fireworks? Thurrock in Essex was 72% Leave. It's 100% in this metalworks.
Are we still going to keep away immigration?
That's a central question for John. He doesn't want politicians to lose sight of it now.
You'd happily be a bit poorer to cut immigration?
Yeah, at the end of the day, we needed our control back, which we didn't have. So, yes, it's going to cost us, so be it. But at the end of the day, we've got our country back.
It actually doesn't line up.
Rob is frustrated with the Chinese steel he has to fix problems with. He voted Leave to put UK industry first, but now he's not sure that'll happen.
I'm 99.9% certain that it won't be a complete straight Leave vote like we thought it would be.
What do you think's going to happen?
Just be a renegotiation, that's what I think will happen. I don't think they're going to... Article 50 probably won't be triggered for as long as possible.
Marek told me despite being here 12 years, this week he felt uncomfortable as a Polish man in the UK. On TV he heard reports of anti-Polish abuse.
We don't welcome you anymore, you have to move back to your country, or you are a Polish vermit, or, you know, hearing stuff like this, it makes me feel like I'm kind of outsider, you know.
A few units away is Rob's furniture business, also a Leave voter. Grim predictions for the economy just don't bother him.
No, I mean the economy has been up and down for the past several years anyway, so, you know, I'm prepared to take a chance.
As for division in the Tory party, Anthony can't believe Boris came unstuck.
Boris, you done a wrong one. You should have gone out for PM.
Done a wrong one.
Yeah, you done a wrong one. Everybody would have backed him. I would have voted for him.
Yeah? You think he's missed an opportunity to be leader?
Very big opportunity. I don't know what made him opt right out at the last second, but, you know, silly move.
Not a single Remain voter at work for us to talk to today, or a single woman either. But no one we did speak to had any regrets about their vote, even if they did have worries about what the end product might look like. Dominic Reynolds, 5 News in Thurrock.
Let's go back to Andy Bell in Westminster now. Andy, a week on, what a week. Bring us up to speed. Where does it leave us?
Well, I think we're still in a period of enormous uncertainty. And I think that announcement by the Chancellor today, abandoning his economic policy, which he's effectively had for 6 years, just shows how much concern, uncertainty there is about where the economy is going and what the UK's relationship will be with the EU in the end. Now, one area where certainty can be brought about in some way is that we get a new Prime Minister and therefore a new leader of the Conservative Party, and that process is underway, and some people think it could move quite quickly. But I think what's become clear, and I've been at the launches of most of the main candidates this week, is that whoever is elected as the leader and becomes the new Prime Minister, there will be no second referendum. The new Prime Minister will be committed to taking Britain out of the EU, and also that principle of ending the free movement of people will be absolutely at the heart of any EU negotiations. So in a period of a lot of uncertainty, I think those are a couple of things which are becoming more clear.
Andy, many thanks indeed. Still to come on the programme. Commemorations take place for the 100th anniversary of the Battle of the Somme. And can the Welsh team of today go one better than their World Cup heroes of 1958? All that and more coming up after the break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News. Commemorations have been taking place around the UK and France on the centenary of the Battle of the Somme. At the site in northern France, the Prime Minister joined members of the royal family and serving soldiers to pay their respects to the more than 1 million dead and wounded, casualties of a senseless slaughter that began 100 years ago today. Julian Drucker has more.
100 years to the day since the British military's bloodiest day. The Battle of the Somme was fought right here in northern France and would last 5 brutal months. So at the Thiepval Memorial, which stands on the former battlefield, 10,000 gathered here to remember the tens of thousands more who lost their lives. As well as members of the royal family, the French president met our Prime Minister in one of the final events he will attend. They paused for the British national anthem. Then the French one. The formal start of the commemorations was marked by a gun salute. It invoked just a fraction of the noise which would have roared around these fields a century ago. The words of a soldier who was there today rang out on the very spot.
The whole earth trembled. You could feel the vibrations coming up through the earth, through your limbs, through your body.
Prince Charles read the words of poet John Masefield, who saw the horror and the squalor for himself in 1917.
It is a place of ruin and death, blown and blasted out of any likeness to any work of man.
Elsewhere in northern France, at Lochnagard, the last post was played. There, the site of the largest crater made during the battle was fittingly adorned. To end the commemorations, young people lined the graves. The children of the 21st century, marking one of the grimmest moments of the 20th. Julian Drucker, 5 News.
So just why does the Somme, of all the bloody battles of World War I, still have such resonance today? Well, just look at the numbers. On the very first day of the battle, there were more than 57,000 British casualties. 19,240 men were killed on that day alone, the worst loss of life ever for Britain's military. Despite those huge losses, the Battle of the Somme dragged on and on, lasting a total of 141 days. And by the end, on the 18th of November 1918, the official number of British dead, missing or wounded was 419,654. The total casualties on both sides had reached more than 1.3 million people. It is considered one of the bloodiest battles in human history. And for what? Well, this is where they were fighting. around the River Somme in the north of France, and this was the front line at the start of the battle. When it was over, the Allies had advanced just 6 miles, more than 1 million lives for 6 miles. Many of the British men who died were in what were known as PALS battalions. They were men from the same communities who signed up to fight alongside each other. And for many, the Somme was the first major action they ever saw. It meant entire streets, villages, towns, and even cities were decimated. Layla Hayes now looks at how significant it is still today.
Across the United Kingdom, the nation fell silent today, remembering the husbands, fathers and sons who lost their lives in the Battle of the Somme. This morning, young men dressed in World War I uniforms entered stations and boarded trains, carrying cards with the names of soldiers who died and moving some to tears. It began 100 years ago today, but changed the course of history forever. This trench at the Imperial War Museum shows the conditions the soldiers had to deal with.
The men who climbed over the top that day walked straight into German enemy fire. On the first day of the battle alone, almost 20,000 British soldiers died.
In all, there were 1 million casualties on both sides.
It's war on an industrial scale. Mountains of munitions are fired, the guns are pounded for 5 long months. It's that wearing down, attritional nature of the battle that becomes so, it still resonates with us now as our memory of the First World War.
Many of the men who went to the Somme were volunteer soldiers.
I think you could put yourself in their shoes, you look at the faces on the photographs and, that could have easily have been me.
Just can't imagine, what it would have been like in those circumstances. It's important that today, when we live the lives we do, to remember those people.
Especially with everything going on in the world at the moment, it's important to remember, what we stand for and that we do support our neighbours.
They fought on the battlefields in France, but the British soldiers who lost their lives there will never be forgotten.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old.
Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn.
At the going down of the sun and in the morning.
We will remember them.
Layla Hayes on the centenary of the start of the Battle of the Somme. In other news now, 2 men have been jailed for the rape, false imprisonment and murder of a teenage girl who was groomed on Facebook. 15-year-old Kaylee Hayward's body was found in a field in Leicestershire last November, 5 days after she went missing. Luke Harlow was sentenced to at least 12 years in jail. Stephen Beedman will serve at least 35 years. And an investigation is taking place into the first known fatality involving a self-driving car. A man behind the wheel of a Tesla that was on autopilot died after colliding with a lorry in Florida. It's been described as their biggest game for over half a century, and right now Wales and their fans are gearing up for tonight's Euro 2016 quarter-final against Belgium, a team ranked second best in the world. Peter Lane is with fans in Lille now. Peter, I imagine the atmosphere there is amazing.
Well, Matt, such a long wait for Wales to reach a match like this, and what a way to do it here in Lille, so close enough to home that so many fans can travel here. And on a Friday too, what a perfect start to the weekend. Is this then the start of a magical night for Wales?
Don't take me home, I just won't want to go to work.
Wales plan to teach Belgium a thing or two on the pitch tonight, but before that, a lesson in song.
Don't take me home.
Welsh Dragons or Belgian Red Devils, someone will have to go home.
Who's going to win? You can't both end the night happy.
I'm going to say Wales because I've got to go with my heart. But we'll see how it goes.
Yes.
But whatever happens, we'll always stay together.
It's good luck for
friends for life. This is an emotional moment.
It's brilliant.
And that's a pretty good word to sum up the atmosphere, although some people trying to drive through the middle of Lille have experienced a few excitable obstacles. This is such a huge day for Wales that thousands of fans like Sian and Jamie are here without tickets because just being here is so important.
You know, you come up for the atmosphere, everybody's intermingling. This is what it's all about. It's once in a lifetime for us. You know, first tournament since 1958, so we had to come out.
Ah yes, 1958, the last time Wales made a quarter-final, knocked out of the World Cup back then by a Brazilian teenager called Pelé. So 58 years on from 1958, Wales faced their biggest, brightest moment.
I've waited for this for over 50 years, and it's just magnificent. It is just wonderful. Magnifique.
A lifetime of waiting.
A lifetime. When I started watching, I never thought I'd be a grandfather before this happened.
There are Welsh voices, young and old here. With the Belgian border only a few miles away, they're outnumbered. But all that matters later are the numbers on the pitch, the goals, to keep the Wales fans singing. Peter Lane, 5 News, Lille.
Come on, Cymru. That's all for now, but I'll be back in an hour for a 5 News Tonight special. Since the referendum result, well, we've had an unprecedented week, haven't we, with resignations, recriminations and a lot of political uncertainty. Who's going to be running the country? When will we leave the European Union? How's it going to affect all of our finances? We'll be looking back at the extraordinary 7 days we've just had. It's the week that shook the UK. Join me at 6:30 for that. But that's it from me for now. Sean Welby has the weather next. I'll see you in an hour's time. Bye for now.